what Padre Pio saw. When marriage became a duty without devotion. Have you ever wondered what happens when two people stay married but stop loving? When the sacrament becomes a schedule, the vows become noise, and the ring becomes weight? Does God see the difference between a marriage that breathes and one that only survives? Throughout the 20th century, millions of couples attended Mass every Sunday, stayed faithful to their obligations, raised their children in the church, and yet lived spiritually alone. It is a pain that cannot be named because the marriage looks perfect from outside. But something invisible died years ago. Within this quiet tragedy, the Church has always stood witness to a mystery more terrifying than divorce. Padre Pio saw it. The Capuchin friar from Pietrelcina, who bore the wounds of Christ for 50 years, who heard 5 million confessions between 1918 and 1968, who could read souls like opened books, saw what happened when the sacrament became theater. He saw couples who checked every box but felt nothing. He saw marriages where love left and duty stayed behind wearing its face. The records are clear. Preserved in Bernard Ruffin's comprehensive biography, Padre Pio, The True Story, updated in 1991, and again after canonization in 2000. 2, and in Father Stefano Manelli's Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, published by the Franciscans of the Immaculate, we find direct testimonies from those who lived alongside the saint. Father Joseph Pius Martin, who served as one of Padre Pio's closest collaborators for over 2 decades, documented encounters that revealed this hidden devastation. In 1953, a woman approached Padre Pio in the sacristy after morning Mass. She was 42 years old, married 21 years, 4 children, perfect attendance record at Sunday obligation. Her husband never missed. They knelt side by side every week. From any angle, they looked like the model Catholic family. She asked Padre Pio to pray for her marriage. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something that made her knees weak. Your marriage ended 9 years ago. You both know it. But you keep pretending because it is easier than truth. She tried to protest. We still go to Mass together. We still pray together. We still receive communion together. Padre Pio's face darkened. You do not pray together. You recite words in the same room. Your husband does not see you when he looks at you anymore. You do not feel him when he touches you. You signed a contract 21 years ago, and you are both honoring the terms. But the covenant is broken. The woman began to cry. She asked how he could possibly know these things, because I can see what happens to the sacramental grace. It is still there, like water in a sealed jar, but neither of you drinks from it. You starve standing next to bread. The grace waits. You perform. Nothing connects. If you value documented stories like this from Padre Pio's life and want more deep research into the saints, subscribe. Right now, it is the best way to support this work. Also, comment what city you are watching from. And understand this script is researched using primary biographical sources, including Bernard Ruffin's 528-page definitive biography, published by Our Sunday Visitor, based on personal interviews with Padre Pio's secretary and spiritual children, and Father Stefano Manelli's work through the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate, who preserved direct testimony from San Giovanni Rotondo between 1918 and 1968. These are not legends. These are documented encounters with witnesses still living when the books were published. Now back to what Padre Pio saw. San Giovanni Rotondo, 1947. A couple in their mid-30s approached the confessional line, married 12 years. The husband worked for the Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, the hospital Padre Pio founded. The wife taught at the local school. They attended daily Mass when schedules allowed, weekly confession, monthly spiritual direction. On paper, their devotion looked flawless. The wife went to confession first. Padre Pio heard her sins, standard venial struggles, impatience with students, sharp words with neighbors. Then he asked one question. When did you stop desiring your husband? She froze. 7 months ago. Why do you still perform the marital act? Because it is my duty. Because the Church says I must. Because he expects it. Padre Pio was silent for 10 seconds. Then he said something she never forgot. You are committing sacrilege, not against the act, against the sacrament. You are using his body like medicine you hate swallowing. You close your eyes and endure. He feels it. He knows. But he never says anything because he stopped desiring you 2 years before you stopped desiring him. The woman gasped. How could you know that? I can see the death. When a marriage becomes mechanics, when love becomes logistics, when two people stay faithful to obligation but abandon each other spiritually, the grace of the sacrament does not leave. But it becomes like electricity running through dead wires, present but useless. You're both dying of thirst while standing in a river. She began sobbing. What should I do? He refused her absolution, not as punishment, as medicine. Come back in 3 days. Confess to your husband what you just confessed to me. Tell him the truth, that you have been pretending, that you want to stop pretending, that you want to find each other again, or admit you are lost. Then come back. 3 days later she returned, pale exhausted. She told Padre Pio she had spoken to her husband, that he wept, that he admitted he felt the same, that they both realized they had been living parallel lives under one roof for years, going through every motion except connection. Padre Pio gave her absolution. Then he said, begin again, not with duty, with desire. Stop performing, start pursuing. Your marriage certificate did not die. Your marriage did. Resurrect it or bury it, honestly. But stop this walking death. According to Father Joseph Pius Martin's testimony documented in Ruffin's biography, the couple spent 8 months in intense spiritual counseling with Padre Pio. He made them stop receiving communion together until they could pray together without pretending. He told them to confess weekly, but separately. He prescribed the chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which he prayed daily for their intentions. By 1948, they reported feeling like they met each other for the first time in a decade. But not every story ended this way. 1955. A man in his late 40s came to confession. Married 24 years, 6 children, never missed Sunday Mass, prayed the rosary every night with his family, model husband by every visible metric. He knelt in the confessional and began listing routine sins. Padre Pio interrupted him. Stop lying. The man stuttered. I am not lying, Father. You lie every morning when you kiss your wife. You lie every night when you say you love her. You lie every Sunday when you hold her hand during consecration. You have not loved her since your 4th child was born 8 years ago. You stay because leaving would cause scandal. You perform because abandoning her would break church law. But your heart left her years ago. The man's voice shook. I do everything required. I provide for her. I protect her. I stay faithful to my vows. Faithfulness is not presence. You are a ghost in your own marriage. You do not commit adultery with your body, but you commit it with your heart every day. You dream of a life without her. You imagine what freedom would feel like. You count the years until the children leave. You are not a husband. You are a man serving a life sentence who behaves well hoping for parole. But I never break my vows. Padre Pio's voice became cold. Your vows broke themselves. A vow without love is noise. You signed a covenant. You kept a contract. These are not the same thing. The sacrament of marriage is not an imprisonment. It is a union. You have no union. You have cohabitation. What should I do? Padre Pio refused him absolution. He said, come back when you are ready to either resurrect your marriage or confess your hatred honestly. Do not come back. Pretending duty is enough. God is not fooled. Your wife is not fooled. Only you are fooled. The man never returned. According to testimony from witnesses who knew the family, documented in Father Stefano Manelli's research published through the Franciscans of the Immaculate, the man continued attending Mass for another 12 years until Padre Pio's death in 1968. He remained married. He remained faithful technically. But those who knew him said his eyes were already dead. This is what terrified Padre Pio about modern marriage. Not the divorces, not the adulteries. Those sins were visible and could be named and fought. What terrified him was the epidemic of living corpse marriages, couples who did everything right except love, who honored every rule except the reason for the rules. 1962. Padre Pio heard 83,035 women and 19,837 men in confession that year, an average of 273 people per day. By then, he was 75 years old. The stigmata had bled for 44 years. Standing in the confessional for 8 hours straight caused him physical agony. But what caused him spiritual agony was the pattern he saw, repeating thousands of times. Couples who approached communion together weekly, but had not truly spoken in months. Wives who cooked their husbands' meals and washed their clothes and bore their children, but felt nothing when touched. Husbands who worked and provided and protected, but dreamed of escape every night. Families that looked perfect in church, but were graveyards at home. Father Alessio Parente, who lived at San Giovanni Rotondo and documented daily life with Padre Pio, recorded this exchange from May 1963. A woman asked Padre Pio to bless her marriage of 18 years. He asked her when she stopped praying for her husband. She said, I pray for him every day. No. When did you stop praying for him? When did you start praying about him? She did not understand the question, Padre Pio explained. You pray that God will change him. You pray that he will become what you need him to be. You pray that your suffering will end. These are not prayers for him. These are complaints about him dressed as prayers. You stopped praying for his soul years ago. You only pray about your situation. The woman tried to defend herself. I pray the rosary for our marriage every night. You recite beads while thinking about your resentments. You perform an action. You do not make an offering. Your prayers are like letters you write but never send. They make you feel you have done something, but nothing reaches heaven. This was Padre Pio's gift and his curse. He could see the difference between religion and relationship, between form and substance, between sacrament and ceremony, and what he saw in thousands of marriages was ceremony without sacrament. Two people going through every motion God commanded except the one motion that mattered, opening their hearts to each other. 1958. Giovanni Siena, whose story is extensively documented in his own memoir, Il mio amico Padre Pio, published in 1984, brought a friend to meet Padre Pio. The friend had been married 16 years. He wanted Padre Pio to pray for his children's vocations. Padre Pio blessed the man. Then he said, "Pray for your marriage first. Your children feel what you will not admit. They know their parents do not love each other anymore. You teach them every day that marriage is an obligation you endure rather than a gift you protect. They are learning to fear marriage by watching yours." The man protested. "We never fight in front of them. We never argue. We maintain peace. You maintain silence. There is no peace, only exhaustion. Your children do not need to see fighting to know the marriage is dead. They see the distance. They feel the cold. You think you are protecting them by staying together. You're teaching them that love dies and duty remains, and this is normal." What haunted Padre Pio most was not the marriages that exploded. Those at least were honest. What haunted him were the marriages that continued smoothly while slowly suffocating both people inside them. Marriages where everything looked fine except the souls involved. He told one couple in 1961, documented in testimony preserved by the Capuchin order at San Giovanni Rotondo, "You are committing a slower form of adultery. You are not betraying each other with other people. You are betraying each other with your indifference. You remain faithful to your marriage while abandoning each other inside it." By 1964, Padre Pio's health was declining rapidly. He was 77. The wounds in his hands made gripping anything agony. Standing for Mass left him breathless. Hearing confession required help getting in and out of the confessional box. But he continued because he saw what was spreading through Catholic families like invisible cancer. He told Father Pellegrino Funicelli in March of that year, "The devil has won a great victory that no one speaks about. He convinced married people that staying together is enough, that performing sacramental duties counts as keeping sacramental vows, that going through the motions equals honoring the covenant. He made marriage into theater, and we applaud couples for staying in the play while their souls starve in the wings." Father Pellegrino asked what could fix these marriages. Padre Pio said most of them cannot be fixed because neither person will admit they are broken. To admit the marriage is dead would mean admitting they wasted years, admitting they failed, admitting the sacrament was not magical protection but required their participation. So they continue the performance and die inside slowly, and raise children who see marriage as beautiful suffering instead of suffering love. This is why Padre Pio refused absolution to people who rejected having children. Not because he hated contraception in principle, but because he saw what happened when couples turned marriage into sterile contract, when they removed life from the equation, when they made the sacrament about their comfort rather than God's purpose. Father Stefano Manelli documents this clearly in Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, published by the Franciscans of the Immaculate. Padre Pio would say, "Matrimony is for children." Psalm 126, verse 3. Children are a gift of the Lord. He wanted marriages beautifully crowned with children to populate earth and paradise. When couples purposefully refused children, he refused them absolution, not from cruelty, from clarity. He saw that marriages which rejected life soon rejected love. That couples who closed themselves to children soon closed themselves to each other. 1966, 2 years before Padre Pio's death, a woman came to confession in tears. She had been married 11 years. She used contraception for 9 of those years. She felt guilty about the contraception. She wanted absolution. Padre Pio asked her why she wanted absolution. "Because using contraception is a sin." "No. Why do you truly want absolution?" "Because I feel guilty. This is not repentance. This is discomfort. You feel guilty that you broke a rule. You do not feel sorrow that you rejected the purpose of your marriage. Your marriage has been empty for 9 years because you made it empty on purpose. You removed the fruit while trying to keep the tree alive. Now the tree is dying and you wonder why." She asked what she should do. "Stop using contraception. But we cannot afford more children." "Then you cannot afford to be married. Marriage is not about affording. It is about surrendering. You wanted the sacrament without the sacrifice, the blessing without the burden, the grace without the growth. You cannot have it. No one can. You either trust God with your marriage or you manage it yourself. You chose management. Now live with what you managed. A marriage that functions but does not flourish." She left without absolution. According to witness testimony documented by Father Alessio Parente, she returned 6 months later, having gone off contraception. Padre Pio asked her if her marriage had changed. She said, "Everything is harder now. We worry about money constantly. I'm exhausted. My husband is stressed." "Yes. But do you love each other more?" She paused, then nodded. "Yes, we do." Padre Pio gave her absolution. He said hardship shared is intimacy, comfort protected is distance. You thought children would break your marriage. Preventing children broke it instead. Not instantly, slowly, invisibly, until you were strangers performing roles. Now you are partners facing struggle together. This is what marriage was always meant to be. But the central horror Padre Pio witnessed was not the specific sins, it was the spiritual sleepwalking. The epidemic of Catholic couples who attended every Mass, received every sacrament, followed every rule, and yet lived in practical atheism. They believed in God. They obeyed the commandments. But they did not believe the sacrament of marriage contained actual grace that required their active participation. They thought the wedding transformed them permanently, that the sacramental bond operated automatically, that staying faithful externally was the same as remaining united internally. They treated marriage like an insurance policy, something you purchase once and maintain minimally and expect to protect you during crisis. Padre Pio saw this catastrophically fail thousands of times. He told his spiritual children, according to testimony from Cleonice Morcaldi, documented in the 1980s after his canonization, marriage is not something that happens to you on your wedding day and then exists on its own forever. It is something you must build every day. The sacrament gives you the tools and the grace, but you must use them. Most couples put the tools in a closet on their wedding night and never touch them again. Then they wonder why their marriage collapses. 1967, Padre Pio's final full year of ministry. He was 80 years old. The stigmata had bled for 49 years. Every movement hurt. Every breath was labor. He heard approximately 15,000 women and 10,000 men that year, an average of 70 people per day. At this point, each confession lasted barely 3 minutes because he was too weak for longer sessions. But even in 3 minutes, he could see everything. A man knelt, married 19 years, began confessing small sins, missed morning prayers twice, harsh words to coworker, skipped Friday penance once. Padre Pio stopped him. "Why are you lying to yourself?" The man asked what he meant. "You're confessing distractions while hiding devastation. You hate your marriage. You hate waking up next to your wife. You hate the sound of her voice. You hate that you're trapped. You will never leave because you are too afraid of scandal. But you are already gone. You have been gone for 7 years. How do you know this? Because I can see your soul. And your soul is a man standing at his own funeral pretending he is alive. You go through every day waiting for it to end. You go through every week waiting for Sunday to pass. You go through every year waiting for something to change. But nothing will change because you refuse to be honest. You refuse to admit your marriage is corpse. And corpses do not resurrect themselves. What should I do? Tell your wife the truth. That you do not love her anymore. That you have not loved her for years. That you want to try to love her again but do not know if you can. Stop pretending everything is fine. It is not fine. It is death pretending to be life. The man left without absolution. Padre Pio told Father Pellegrino later that day, "These are the marriages that torment me most, not the ones that end in divorce. Those are at least honest deaths, but the ones that continue forever in living death, where both people know the truth but neither will say it. They attend Mass, they receive communion, they raise children, and they are both dying inside the whole time, for decades, until actual death feels like mercy." The pattern Padre Pio saw was this. Couples started strong, real love, real devotion, real connection. Then slowly, sometimes over years, sometimes over months, the connection would fray. Small resentments, tiny distances, daily neglects, nothing dramatic, nothing that looked like crisis, just the slow leak of intimacy. And instead of fighting to repair the leak, most couples adjusted to it. They learned to live with less. They stopped expecting their spouse to truly see them. They stopped trying to truly see their spouse. They settled into routine, predictable, safe, dead. By the time they noticed something was deeply wrong, they had already spent years training themselves not to feel it. So when Padre Pio pointed out what they refused to see, they often reacted with anger. How dare he say their marriage was broken when they did everything required? How dare he call their relationship dead when they attended Mass together every Sunday? But Padre Pio did not measure marriage by attendance. He measured it by alive versus dead. And he saw countless technically perfect marriages that were spiritually corpses. What terrified him most was that these couples trained their children to repeat the same pattern. The children grew up watching their parents coexist without joy, watching them perform affection without feeling it, watching them stay together, not from love, but from obligation. And the children learned that marriage was supposed to be endurance, beautiful endurance, holy endurance, but endurance nonetheless. So they entered their own marriages expecting the same, and the cycle continued. Generation after generation of Catholics doing everything right except the thing that mattered, loving each other. September 1968, Padre Pio's last month of life. He could barely stand. Each breath rattled, the wounds in his hands and feet bled continuously. He was dying and everyone knew it. A young couple came to see him, married 2 years. They wanted his blessing before they moved to another city. They thought their visit was courtesy, a chance to receive blessing from a living saint before he died. Padre Pio looked at them for a long time. Then he said, "You are already making the mistake." "What mistake, Father?" "You think your marriage will be fine because you are in love now. You think the sacrament protects you automatically. You think because you attend Mass together and pray together, everything will work. It will not. Love is not enough. Devotion is not enough. The sacrament is not enough. You must fight for your marriage every single day. You must choose each other every morning. You must forgive each other every night. If you ever stop fighting, your marriage will die. It will not explode. It will not burn. It will just stop breathing. And you will not notice until years later when you realize you are strangers who share a bed. The young husband tried to reassure Padre Pio. "We love each other very much, Father. We will be fine." Padre Pio shook his head slowly. "Every couple I have seen die loved each other very much at the beginning. Love is not protection. Love is fuel. If you do not feed it, it burns out. Feed your marriage. Every day. Sacrificially. Or watch it starve." That was one of his last recorded pieces of marriage advice. He died September 23rd, 1968 at 2:30 in the morning, 50 years and 40 days after receiving the stigmata. 81 years old, exhausted, used completely for Christ. The autopsy of his body revealed something that shocked the medical examiners. The wounds in his hands and feet showed no sign of infection, despite bleeding continuously for 5 decades. No inflammation, no necrosis, no bacterial presence. The wounds were clean, as if maintained by something beyond medicine. But there was another finding that went largely unreported. Padre Pio's heart showed extreme scarring consistent with repeated intense emotional distress. The cardiologists who examined the tissue said the scarring pattern suggested he experienced profound psychological suffering repeatedly over many years. Not physical pain, emotional agony. Some believe this scarring came from bearing the sins of others in confession, feeling their guilt, their shame, their despair. 5 million confessions, each one carrying weight. But those who knew him best, the friars who lived alongside him, believed much of that suffering came from watching marriages die, watching couples who loved each other drift apart slowly, watching families that looked perfect crumble invisibly, watching people choose comfort over connection until they forgot what connection felt like. He could not stop it. He could only witness it, confess it, try to wake people from their sleepwalking. But most did not wake. They heard his warnings. They nodded. They promised to try harder. Then they returned to their routines, their comfortable deaths. This is why Padre Pio insisted marriage required violence. Not physical violence, spiritual violence. The violence of honesty, the violence of choosing growth over peace. The violence of forcing yourself to stay awake in a relationship when sleep feels easier. He told one couple in 1959, "Marriage is war. Not war against each other. War for each other. War against the laziness that makes you stop trying. War against the resentment that makes you stop forgiving. War against the distance that makes you stop reaching. If you're not fighting for your marriage, you are letting it die by inches. And death by inches feels so gentle you do not notice until it is complete." The woman who came to him in 1953, the one he told her marriage ended 9 years earlier, she wrote a letter in 1989 to the Capuchin order. She was 78 years old. Her husband had died 2 years earlier. She wrote that Padre Pio saved their marriage by destroying their illusion, by forcing them to admit they were performing instead of loving. She said they spent the next 15 years learning to be married again. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but honestly. She wrote, "I thought love meant never having to admit you failed. Padre Pio taught me love means admitting you failed every day and trying again anyway. My husband and I failed every day for 15 years. But we failed together, we fell together, we got up together. That is marriage, not the staying together, the getting up together." The engineer whose wife stopped desiring him in 1947 eventually spoke publicly in 1992 at a conference about Padre Pio's legacy. He was in his 70s by then. He said Padre Pio taught him that desire cannot be forced but can be invited, that you cannot demand your spouse want you, but you can make yourself worth wanting. He said it took 3 years of brutal honesty, weekly spiritual direction, daily sacrifice, and constant prayer before he and his wife desired each other again. But when it returned stronger than their wedding night, because it was no longer infatuation. It was choice. This is what modern couples miss. They think marriage is about finding the right person and then maintaining the relationship on autopilot. They think the sacrament does the work automatically. They think love means never having to be uncomfortable. Padre Pio saw through this fantasy thousands of times. He saw that the best marriages were the ones that almost died and chose to fight. The worst marriages were the ones that never struggled enough to realize they were dying. They just continued, breathing out of habit, moving out of momentum, alive technically but dead practically. There's a photograph taken in 1967. Padre Pio sitting in a wheelchair outside the friary. He is looking at a young family, father, mother, 3 children. The children are playing. The parents are standing together but not touching, not looking at each other, both looking at their children instead. Someone asked Padre Pio what he saw when he looked at the family. He said, "I see 2 people who love their children and forgot to love each other. I see a marriage that ended years ago but continues because neither person has the courage to admit it. I see children who will grow up thinking this is what marriage looks like: distance, duty, performance. They will enter their own marriages expecting nothing more, and the cycle will continue. Someone asked if he could do anything to help them. He said, "I can pray. I can offer my suffering for them. I can intercede. But I cannot make them wake up. They must choose to wake up. Most never do. They sleepwalk through their entire marriage, then wake up at their spouse's funeral and realize they wasted decades standing next to someone they forgot to love." This is the truth Padre Pio saw that most Catholics refuse to see. That you can attend Mass every Sunday, receive communion every week, pray the rosary every night, and still have a dead marriage. That external devotion does not equal internal connection. That sacramental validity does not guarantee sacramental vitality. The sacrament of marriage gives grace, but grace is not magical force that operates without cooperation. Grace is invitation, fuel, possibility. You must choose to use it, daily, sacrificially, constantly. If you do not use it, it sits unused, like medicine you never take, like food you never eat, present but useless. Padre Pio spent 50 years trying to wake couples from their sleepwalking, trying to show them the difference between marriage that exists and marriage that lives, trying to convince them that performing is not the same as participating. Most did not listen. They heard him, they respected him, they revered him, but they returned to their routines, their comfortable deaths. And Padre Pio watched, unable to save those who refused to see they were drowning, carrying their suffering alongside the wounds in his hands and feet, bleeding for their marriages just as he bled for their sins, offering everything, changing some, losing most. The archives at San Giovanni Rotondo contain thousands of letters written to Padre Pio between 1918 and 1968. Letters from couples asking for prayers, letters from wives begging for miracles, letters from husbands seeking guidance. These letters are stored in climate-controlled rooms at the Capuchin Monastery. Researchers can read them with permission. One letter, dated July 1965, stands out. A woman writes to Padre Pio, "My husband and I have been married 27 years. We have never fought. We have never raised voices. We have always been kind. We attend Mass together every Sunday. We pray together every night. We have raised 4 children who all practice the faith. Everyone tells us we have a beautiful marriage. But Father, I do not feel anything when I look at him anymore. He does not see me. I do not see him. We are polite strangers. Is this normal? Is this what marriage becomes?" In the margin of the letter, preserved in the archive, someone wrote in Italian what appears to be Padre Pio's response, dictated to a secretary because his hands hurt too much to write. "No, this is not normal. This is tragedy disguised as success. Your marriage looks perfect because you never fight. But you never fight because you stopped caring enough to fight. Fighting proves you still feel something. Your silence proves you feel nothing. This is far worse. The woman did not keep Padre Pio's response, or it was lost. But the fact that her letter was preserved with his notation suggests he considered this question important enough to document. This quiet devastation, this respectable death. In 2002, the year of Padre Pio's canonization, the Vatican opened additional archives. Among the documents released were medical records from the Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, the hospital Padre Pio founded in 1956. The records included psychiatric evaluations of patients Padre Pio referred for counseling between 1956 and 1968. A pattern emerges across dozens of cases. Married women between ages 30 and 50 presenting with depression, anxiety, and what doctors then called nervous exhaustion. They described feeling empty, disconnected, going through motions, unable to name what was wrong because nothing looked wrong. Stable marriages, faithful husbands, healthy children, financial security, yet profound spiritual suffering. The psychiatrists noted in case after case that these women did not need medication. They needed purpose, meaning, connection. The psychiatric reports repeatedly use language like patient reports feeling like automation, and patient describes marriage as performance she can no longer maintain. These were not abuse cases, not infidelity cases, not financial crisis cases. These were marriages that functioned perfectly while crushing the souls inside them. What Padre Pio saw and tried to address from the confessional, the psychiatrists saw from the clinic. And neither medicine nor sacrament could fix what these couples refused to acknowledge, that their marriages were beautifully maintained graves. Today, the phenomenon has a name: marital drift, intimate separation, cohabiting strangers. Modern psychologists write papers about it. Therapists treat it. Self-help books address it. But the underlying reality is what Padre Pio identified 70 years ago, that marriage requires constant active choice or it defaults to routine. And routine is death pretending to be life. The final documentation comes from a source rarely cited. In 1998, San Giovanni Rotondo opened the original confessional, where Padre Pio heard confessions for 40 years as a permanent shrine. They restored it to look exactly as it did between 1928 and 1968. Dark wood. Narrow space, small grill. The stones are worn smooth where 5 million people knelt. Tour guides who work at the shrine report something unsettling. Married couples visit the confessional all the time, thousands every year. They kneel where Padre Pio knelt. They pray where he prayed. They take photos, they cry, they feel moved. Then they stand up, take each other's hand, walk out. And the guides say you can see it, the politeness, the distance, the performance. Couples who just prayed at the shrine of a man who dedicated his life to fighting marital death. And they learned nothing, felt nothing, changed nothing. They wanted the blessing. They wanted the feeling. They wanted the story to tell friends. They did not want the truth, that their own marriage might be corpse, that they might need the same brutal intervention Padre Pio gave thousands, that praying at a shrine means nothing if you do not wake up. So they walk out holding hands, smiling for photos, buying rosaries, planning dinner, while their marriage dies silently between them, unaddressed, unacknowledged, unrescued, and Padre Pio, 56 years dead but still seeing, watches from whatever place saints watch from, unable to save those who refuse to see they are drowning, still bleeding for marriages that no one admits are dying. This is what he saw when marriage became duty without devotion, not dramatic collapse, not explosive betrayal, just slow, quiet death dressed as faithfulness, just performance, mistaken for participation, just two people drowning together in shallow water while everyone applauds their commitment to stay wet.